I am 38 years old, standing in front of a mirror on my wedding day. My fingers trace the faint scar above my left eyebrow. 16 years ago, my own father put it there with a bottle he threw at my face. Today, waiting for me outside that door is the woman who saved my soul. She happens to be the younger sister of the wife who destroyed me. Life has a strange way of turning tragedy into redemption. But before you see my joy, you need to understand my pain. Before I take you back to where it all began, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below, and if stories of survival and second chances speak to your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Now let me take you back 16 years to the night my whole world crumbled because of one man's lie. When I was 22 years old, I believed I had everything figured out. I had just graduated with a degree in civil engineering from Ohio State University, and a reputable construction company in Columbus had offered me a position before I even walked across that graduation stage. My professor said I had a gift for structural analysis, for seeing how pieces fit together to create something solid and lasting. I thought my life was built the same way. I had married Megan 8 months before graduation. We met in our junior year at a campus coffee shop. She spilled her latte on my textbook, apologized with the most embarrassing laugh I had ever heard, and somehow that moment turned into 3 years of what I thought was genuine love. By the time I got that job offer, she was 4 months pregnant with our first child. We bought a small house in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Columbus. It had a yellow door and a backyard just big enough for a swing set. I used to sit on the porch in the evenings watching the sunset, thinking about teaching my kid how to throw a football in that yard. My family lived about 45 minutes away. My father, Harold, was a carpenter who built furniture with his hands and raised his sons with strict expectations. He was not a man who said "I love you" often, but he showed it in other ways. He taught me how to measure twice and cut once, how to shake a man's hand firmly, how to keep my word no matter what. My mother, Patricia, was the softness to his edges. She baked apple pie every Sunday and always had a way of smoothing things over when my father got too intense. My younger brother, Derek, was 3 years behind me. We were never particularly close, but I assumed that was just how brothers were. He was finishing his last year of college, studying business, and we would see each other at family dinners without much to say beyond small talk. Everything felt stable. Everything felt safe. I had no idea that stability was about to be shattered by someone I considered a friend. His name was Travis. He worked in the same department as me, a senior engineer who had been with the company for 7 years. He was 5 years older than me, charming in a way that made people trust him instantly. When I first started, he took me under his wing. He showed me how things worked, introduced me to the right people, and always had advice ready when I felt overwhelmed. I genuinely thought he was looking out for me. What I did not know was that Travis had applied for the team lead position that eventually went to me. Management saw my potential and my fresh ideas as an asset. They promoted me over him after just 10 months. Travis smiled and shook my hand when the announcement was made. He said he was proud of me, that I deserved it. I believed every word. I was young and naive, and I could not fathom that someone who seemed so supportive could be plotting my destruction behind closed doors. Travis knew everything about my life because I told him everything. During lunch breaks and after work drinks, I talked about Megan, about the baby, coming about my parents and my brother. I shared my schedule, my habits, my routines. I told him how Megan sometimes picked me up from work on Fridays so we could grab dinner together. I handed him every piece of information he needed to dismantle my existence, and I did it with a grateful smile on my face. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday evening. I came home from work to find Megan sitting on the couch, her eyes red and puffy from crying. She was holding her phone like it had personally offended her. When I asked what was wrong, her voice cracked. She asked me who the red-headed woman at my office was. I had no idea what she was talking about. There was no red-headed woman. I told her that confusion spreading through my chest like cold water. She said someone had called her from an unknown number, and told her that I was having an affair with a coworker. The caller described specific details about my schedule, about times I supposedly left early or stayed late. Megan wanted to believe me. I could see that in her eyes, but the seed of doubt had been planted. I spent that night holding her, reassuring her, promising her that there was no one else. She eventually calmed down, and we went to bed with an uneasy peace between us. I barely slept. My mind kept racing, trying to figure out who would make such a call. But I pushed the thought aside. Maybe it was a wrong number. Maybe someone was playing a cruel prank. I convinced myself it was nothing. 3 days later, my father called. His voice was cold in a way I had never heard before. He asked me about something happening at my company, something he had heard from a concerned party. I asked him what he meant, and he would not give me details. He just said I should think carefully about the choices I was making. The call ended without a goodbye. That night, I sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes before going inside. Something was very wrong. Someone was spreading lies about me, and those lies were reaching the people I loved. I thought about Travis, about the way he sometimes looked at me when he thought I was not paying attention. But I dismissed it. Travis was my mentor. Travis was my friend. There was no way he would do something like this. I was so foolish. The evidence appeared 2 weeks after that first phone call. Photographs, printed on glossy paper, slipped into an envelope and mailed directly to my wife. They showed me standing close to a female co-worker named Sarah at the company holiday party. In one image, she was leaning in to say something near my ear because the music was loud. In another, we were both laughing at something someone else had said. Innocent moments captured from angles that made them look like something else entirely. The person who took those photos knew exactly what they were doing. Along with the pictures came a typed note. No signature, no return address. Just cold, calculated words claiming that I had been booking hotel rooms every Friday afternoon for the past 3 months. It listed a specific hotel near the office and claimed to have records of my visits. None of it was true. I had never set foot in that hotel. But the note was detailed enough to sound credible, and that was all it took. Megan called me at work, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. She said the pictures had come in the mail. She said she could not do this anymore. Before I could respond, before I could tell her to wait for me to come home so we could talk, she hung up. I left the office immediately, breaking every speed limit on my way back to our little house with the yellow door. When I got there, she was on the phone with my mother. I could hear Patricia's voice through the speaker, high-pitched and upset. Megan looked at me like I was a stranger who had broken into her home. She asked me to explain the photos. I tried. I told her about the party, about Sarah being a colleague I barely spoke to outside of work meetings, about how someone was clearly trying to frame me. She shook her head. She said the hotel records were being sent to my father. There were no hotel records because I had never been to that hotel. But someone had created fake documents. Someone had put in effort to manufacture proof of something that never happened. Later, I would learn that Travis had connections at that hotel through a college friend who worked the front desk. He had fabricated a guest log with my name on it. At the time, I had no idea how deep the conspiracy went. That Sunday, my father demanded a family meeting. He called it a reckoning. When I arrived at my parents' house, everyone was already there. My mother sat in her usual chair, tissue clutched in her hand, refusing to meet my eyes. Derek leaned against the wall near the window, arms crossed, jaw tight, with anger I did not understand. Megan sat on the couch, one hand on her belly, the other wiping tears from her cheeks. And my father stood in the center of the room like a judge about to deliver a sentence. He threw the photographs and the fake hotel documents onto the coffee table. He told me to explain myself. His voice shook with a rage I had never seen directed at me before. I picked up the papers, saw the fabricated guest log, and felt the ground shift beneath my feet. I told him it was fake. I told him someone was setting me up. I swore on everything I held sacred that I had never cheated on my wife. Derek stepped forward then. His voice cut through the room like a blade. He told me to stop lying. He said Travis had already told him everything. I felt the blood drain from my face. Derek knew Travis. I had not known that. Apparently, they had been going to the same gym for over a year. Travis had casually mentioned my supposed affair during a workout session, acting like he was confiding in Derek out of concern for the family. He had poisoned my own brother against me, without me ever knowing they were connected. I tried to explain about Travis. I said he was jealous of my promotion, that he had motive to destroy me. No one listened. My father said I was making excuses. My mother just cried. Derek called me pathetic. And Megan stood up, looked me in the eyes, and said she was leaving. She said she could not raise a child with a man who could not be trusted. That was when I lost my temper. I shouted that they were all being manipulated. I yelled that not a single person in that room had bothered to ask for my side before deciding I was guilty. I said Travis was a snake who had been planning this since the day I got promoted over him. My father grabbed a beer bottle from the table and hurled it at me. The glass caught me above my left eye. I remember the sharp burst of pain, the warmth of blood streaming down my face, the way my mother gasped, but still did not move to help me. I remember Derek laughing. Actually laughing. He said I finally got what I deserved. I left that house bleeding. I drove back to my home, the one with the yellow door, expecting at least to sleep in my own bed and figure things out in the morning. But when I arrived, Megan was already gone. Her clothes, her jewelry, her toiletries, all of it vanished. She left a note on the kitchen counter. 3 sentences. Do not look for me. Do not contact me. This child will never know your name. I called her phone over 100 times that night. She never answered. I called my parents, blocked. I called Derek. He picked up just long enough to tell me I was no longer his brother. Then the line went dead. The next morning I went to work in a daze. I had not slept. The cut on my forehead was held together with butterfly bandages I had applied myself. Within an hour of arriving, I was called into the Human Resources office. There was an anonymous complaint about my conduct with female colleagues. Multiple women had allegedly reported feeling uncomfortable around me. The allegations were vague, but serious enough to warrant immediate suspension pending investigation. As I was escorted out of the building, I passed Travis in the hallway. He was leaning against a cubicle wall, coffee cup in hand, watching me with a small smile. He said it was tough luck. He said maybe I had trusted the wrong people. And I knew in that moment that he had orchestrated every single piece of my downfall. He had taken everything from me, my wife, my unborn child, my family, my job, my reputation. And he did it all with a handshake and a friendly pat on the back. The months that followed were the darkest of my life. The company investigation cleared me of any wrongdoing after they found no evidence to support the anonymous complaints. But by then, it did not matter. The damage was done. My reputation was tarnished. My team looked at me differently. Management decided it was best for everyone if I quietly resigned. They offered me a modest severance package to make the problem go away. I signed the papers because I had no fight left in me. My best friend Marcus was the only person who stood by me. We had known each other since high school, and he was one of those rare souls who judged people by their character, not by rumors. He let me move into his spare bedroom. He did not ask questions when I spent entire days staring at the ceiling. He just made sure I ate something and reminded me that I was still breathing for a reason. For a while, I did not believe him. I drank too much. I replayed every moment in my head, searching for what I could have done differently. The guilt was irrational, but overwhelming. Maybe if I had been less trusting. Maybe if I had noticed the signs. Maybe if I had fought harder to make them believe me. The what-ifs nearly drowned me. Marcus pulled me out of that spiral. One evening, about 3 months after I lost everything, he sat me down and told me something I have never forgotten. He said that people who want to destroy you will always find a way if you let them. But people who want to live, who want to prove that the truth matters, they find a way too. He asked me which person I wanted to be. I did not have an answer that night, but his words planted something in me, a small, stubborn seed of defiance. I started looking for jobs in other cities. I needed distance. I needed to be somewhere no one knew my name or my story. A construction company in Denver, Colorado, responded to my application. They offered me an entry-level position, a significant step down from where I had been, but I took it without hesitation. Within 2 weeks, I packed my car with everything I owned, which was not much, and drove 15 hours west to start over. Denver saved me. The mountains reminded me how small my problems were compared to the vastness of the world. The people I met knew nothing about Columbus or Travis or the family that had abandoned me. I was just Anderson, the new engineer who worked hard and kept to himself. I threw myself into my job. I volunteered for the projects no one else wanted. I stayed late and arrived early. I earned my promotions the honest way, one successful project at a time. A year into my new life, I made the mistake of checking social media. I had avoided it, completely deleted most of my accounts, but curiosity got the better of me one lonely night. I searched for Megan's name, expecting to see photos of my child, the baby I had never met. What I found instead shattered what little peace I had built. The photos showed Megan with Derek. They were together. Not just together, as in law family members supporting each other. Together, as in holding hands, sharing kisses, posing like a couple. And Megan was pregnant again, visibly pregnant. The timeline did not add up. If that was a new pregnancy, it meant they had gotten together almost immediately after she left me. But looking at how comfortable they seemed, how natural their intimacy appeared, I realized the truth was probably worse. They had likely been involved before any of this happened. The affair story they pinned on me might have been projection all along. I closed the laptop and did not open it again for months. Some truths are too heavy to carry all at once. I had to let it settle slowly, like sediment sinking to the bottom of a river. Eventually, the anger faded into something quieter. A sad acceptance that the people I had loved most were capable of unimaginable cruelty. And a growing suspicion that Derek and Travis had worked together from the very beginning. One wanted my job, the other wanted my wife. And together, they took both. I did not reach out. I did not confront them. What would be the point? They had already convicted me in their minds. Nothing I said would change that, so I focused on building a life that had nothing to do with them. The years passed. I finished my MBA through evening classes. I got promoted to project manager, then senior manager, then eventually vice president of operations. By the time I was 36 years old, I had a corner office with a view of the Rocky Mountains, a house in a neighborhood with tree-lined streets, and a savings account that would have made my 22-year-old self dizzy. I had everything except someone to share it with. I dated occasionally, but nothing ever stuck. Trust was difficult. Letting people close felt dangerous. I had built walls around my heart so high that even I could not see over them anymore. I told myself I was content. I told myself solitude was a choice. But late at night, when the house was too quiet and the memories crept in, I knew I was lying. Then, 14 years after my world ended, I walked into a coffee shop in Phoenix, Arizona. I was there for a construction conference, staying at a hotel nearby, looking for a quiet place to review some documents before my afternoon session. The coffee shop was small and cozy, filled with the smell of fresh pastries and brewing espresso. I ordered a black coffee and found a seat near the window. A woman approached my table. She was carrying a latte, looking hesitant, like she was debating whether to speak or walk away. I glanced up, ready to politely decline whatever she was selling. Then I recognized her face. It was Rachel, Megan's younger sister. She looked different from the teenager I vaguely remembered. She was a grown woman now, early 30s, with kind eyes, and an expression that held none of the hostility I expected. She asked if she could sit down. Every instinct told me to refuse. But something in her voice, a sincerity that felt almost desperate, made me nod toward the empty chair. Rachel told me she had cut off contact with Megan 5 years ago. She told me their mother, Linda, had passed away from cancer 3 years prior. And before Linda died, she revealed something that changed everything Rachel believed about her family. Megan had confessed to their mother during those final weeks. She admitted that she knew I was innocent. She admitted that she had feelings for Derek long before she left me. She admitted that the affair she accused me of never happened, but the affair she was actually having did. Linda was horrified. She wanted Megan to come clean, to reach out to me to make things right. Megan refused. She said too much time had passed. She said it would only make things worse. Linda died carrying that secret, but not before she told Rachel. Rachel confronted Megan after the funeral. She demanded the full truth. And slowly, piece by piece, the real story came out. Travis and Derek had been friends for longer than anyone knew. They met at the gym and bonded over their shared resentments. Derek had always been jealous of me, the older brother who seemed to succeed at everything effortlessly. He wanted what I had. He wanted my wife. Travis wanted my position. Together, they devised a plan to take both: the anonymous calls, the photographs, the fake hotel records, the complaints to human resources. All of it was coordinated. Megan knew. She might not have helped plan it, but she knew, and she chose to believe the lies, because they gave her permission to do what she already wanted. She left me not because she thought I was unfaithful, but because she was. The child she carried when she left was not mine. It was Derek's. They had been sleeping together for months before everything fell apart. Rachel sat across from me in that coffee shop, tears streaming down her face, apologizing for a family she no longer claimed. She said she could not undo what happened to me, but she wanted me to know that at least one person believed me. At least one person was sorry. For the first time in 14 years, I felt something crack inside my chest. Not pain, release. Someone finally saw the truth. Someone finally acknowledged that I had been wronged. I did not realize how desperately I needed to hear those words until Rachel said them. Rachel and I exchanged phone numbers that day in Phoenix. I did not expect anything to come of it. She was part of a past I had worked hard to bury. But she kept reaching out. Simple messages at first, checking in, sharing small observations about her day. She worked as a veterinarian at a clinic in Arizona, dedicated to animals, in a way that reminded me of how I used to be dedicated to my work before it all went wrong. We talked on the phone for hours at a time. She told me about her life, about how she always felt like the outsider in her family, because she questioned things that everyone else accepted. She told me how she confronted Megan, and how Megan stopped speaking to her after that. She told me she had spent years in therapy trying to understand how the people she loved could be capable of such deliberate harm. I told her about Denver, about Marcus, about the long, slow process of rebuilding myself from nothing. I told her things I had never told anyone, not because she was Megan's sister, but because she was the first person who truly listened. Somewhere along the way, friendship became something more. I flew to Phoenix on weekends. She flew to Denver when she could. We explored hiking trails and shared quiet dinners and talked about everything and nothing. She was nothing like her sister. Where Megan was impulsive and secretive, Rachel was thoughtful and transparent. Where Megan ran from difficult conversations, Rachel faced them head-on. 2 years after our reunion in that coffee shop, I asked Rachel to marry me. We were standing on a trail in the mountains outside Denver, the sun setting behind the peaks, the world painted in shades of gold and amber. She looked at me with those kind eyes and said yes without hesitation. Then she said something I will carry with me forever. She said she knew she could never undo what her sister did, but she could spend the rest of her life proving that not everyone in her family was like Megan. She could show me what loyalty really looked like. Before the wedding, an unexpected message arrived through Marcus. My father wanted to talk. Harold had finally learned the truth. Derek and Megan's marriage had collapsed after 10 years. Apparently, the guilt caught up with Derek one night, when he drank too much. He confessed everything to Harold during an argument. The planning, the fake evidence, the affair that started before I ever lost my job. Harold sat with that knowledge for months before he worked up the courage to reach out. I agreed to meet him at a diner halfway between Denver and Columbus. He looked older than I remembered, smaller somehow, like the weight of what he had done had physically diminished him. He could barely look me in the eyes when he sat down. He apologized. He said it was the worst mistake of his life. He said he had spent 16 years defending the wrong son and punishing the right one. He said he understood if I never forgave him, but he needed me to know that he was sorry. He cried. I had never seen my father cry before that day. I told him I forgave him. And I meant it. Holding on to anger had cost me too many years already. But I also told him I would never forget. I would never forget the feeling of that bottle hitting my face. I would never forget my mother, standing frozen, choosing silence over her own child. I would never forget Derek's laugh as blood ran down my forehead. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It means refusing to let the wound poison you any longer. I invited Harold and Patricia to the wedding. They accepted. Derek and Megan were not invited. I heard later that Derek tried to contact me through various relatives. I never responded. Some doors need to stay closed. The wedding was small. Just 30 people gathered in a venue with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the mountains. Marcus stood beside me as my best man. Harold and Patricia sat in the front row, Patricia crying from the moment the music started. Rachel walked down the aisle in a simple white dress, wildflowers in her hair, smiling like she had been waiting her whole life for this moment. As I watched her walk toward me, I thought about everything that led to this. The lies, the betrayal, the years of loneliness, the slow, painful process of putting myself back together. If none of that had happened, I would never have moved to Denver. I would never have become the man I am today. And I would never have met Rachel in that coffee shop in Phoenix. I do not believe everything happens for a reason. That feels like too convenient an excuse for cruelty. But I do believe that how we respond to what happens defines who we become. I chose not to let bitterness consume me. I chose to keep building even when everything was torn down. And eventually, life offered me something I never expected. A second chance at happiness with someone who earned my trust. Travis, by the way, got what was coming to him. About 8 years after I left Columbus, he was fired from the company for falsifying project reports. Turned out he had been cutting corners and faking inspections for years. When they finally caught him, his whole career collapsed. Last I heard, he was working at a hardware store 2 towns over from where he used to live. I felt nothing when I learned this. Not satisfaction, not vindication. Just a quiet acknowledgement that the universe has its own way of balancing things out. Standing at that altar, Rachel's hands in mine, I made a promise to myself. The past was behind me. The people who hurt me would have to live with their choices. But I was done carrying their weight. Sometimes the family you are born into fails you, but the family you choose can save you. I found that truth in Marcus, who never doubted me. I found it in Rachel, who saw me clearly when no one else would. And I found it in myself, in the stubborn refusal to let someone else's lies become my story. If you are going through something similar right now, if someone has betrayed you or the people you trusted have turned against you, I want you to know this. The truth always finds its way to the surface. It might take years. It might take longer than feels fair. But eventually it rises. And you deserve to be believed. You deserve to be loved by people who see the real you. Do not give up on that possibility. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been wrongly accused of something by people you loved? How did you find your way through it? Share your story in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like, subscribe to this channel, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that second chances are real. Thank you for spending this time with me. I wish you truth, I wish you healing, and most of all, I wish you the kind of love that sees you for exactly who you are.